One of the most renowned kings, not only in Chinese history, but also in the world, is Qin Shi Huang, the very first emperor. He was the first to successfully unify the Central Plains under a single rule after centuries of division. Qin Shi Huang is regarded as the one who laid the foundation for over 2,000 years of Chinese history. To many, he was a genius with extraordinary vision, one of the greatest emperors of all time. Yet to others, Qin Shi Huang is remembered as a tyrant, authoritarian, oppressive, and ruthless. So how should we truly assess him? Was Qin Shi Huang the first tyrant, a visionary ahead of his time, or perhaps a complex figure who embodied both extremes within himself? Let us explore this question together through the article The Life of Qin Shi Huang, First Tyrant or Visionary Ahead of His Time, with World Mystery.
Childhood and succession of Qin Shi Huang. Qin Shi Huang, whose given name was Ying Zheng, is recorded in Records of the Grand Historian, Annals of Qin Shi Huang, as the son of King Zhuang Shang of Qin. He was born in 259 BCE at Handan, the capital of the state of Zhao. His birth took place during the chaotic Warring States period when the Zhou royal house had declined and the feudal lords rose to seize and annex each other's territories. From hundreds of smaller states at the start of the Zhou era, by this time only about a dozen remained, of which the most powerful 7 were known as the 7 Warring States. Among them, Qin had become the strongest, thanks to the reforms of Shen Yang nearly a century earlier. Ying Zheng's father, Yi Ren, also known as Zichu, was the 10th son of Prince Angu Jun. Since he was neither the eldest nor the legitimate heir, he had almost no chance of succession. As was customary in that era, he was sent as a political hostage to Zhao. Life as a hostage was harsh and perilous, especially since Qin and Zhao were frequently at war. After Qin's crushing victory over Zhao at the Battle of Chongping in 260 BCE, Yi Ren's life became even more endangered. At this critical time, he encountered Lu Buwei, a wealthy merchant renowned for his cunning and political acumen. Seeing Yi Ren as a golden opportunity to change his own fate, Lu Buwei took him under his wing. He devised a plan for Yi Ren to win the favor of Lady Huayang, the childless consort of Prince Angu Jun, so that Yi Ren might be adopted as her son and thereby become heir. The scheme succeeded. Yi Ren gained prestige, while Lu Buwei became his closest confidant. Later, Yi Ren married Lady Zhao Ji, a beautiful courtesan who had once been Lu Buwei's concubine, and she bore him a son named Ying Zheng. This unusual circumstance gave rise to persistent rumors that Ying Zheng was in fact Lu Buwei's biological son. However, most historians regard this claim as unfounded, seeing it as slander meant to discredit Qin Shi Huang in later times. Ying Zheng's childhood was marked by hardship. He and his mother lived in fear in Zhao, constantly fleeing danger. Only in 250 BCE, when King Zhao Xiang of Qin died and Yi Ren returned home to ascend the throne as King Zhuang Xiang of Qin, were mother and child brought back safely. Ying Zheng was then named crown prince. 3 years later, upon his father's death, the 13-year-old Ying Zheng ascended the throne as king of Qin. In reality, however, power was firmly in the hands of Lu Buwei, who held the title of chancellor and was honored as second father. At this stage, the young king was little more than a figurehead. Yet with great determination and ambition, he began to quietly consolidate his own influence, waiting for the moment to cast off Lu Buwei's control. It was this early resilience and political maneuvering that laid the foundation for his later rise as the ruler who would unify all of China.
The era of Lu Buwei's power. In 247 BCE, Ying Zheng ascended the throne of Qin at the age of only 13. As he was still a child, real power in the court lay in the hands of Lu Buwei, who was appointed chancellor and effectively became the most powerful figure in Qin. Originally a shrewd merchant, Lu Buwei had once risked everything by investing in a special commodity, Ying Yi Reng, or Zizu, father of Ying Zheng, and through this gamble he rose to the pinnacle of political power. Following the example of renowned nobles from other states, Lu Buwei generously recruited retainers, with their numbers reaching into the thousands, making his influence formidable. He also ordered his followers to compile knowledge from every field into the monumental annals of Lu Buwei, Liu Shi Chun Shu, a work of over 200,000 characters covering philosophy, governance, and statecraft. Historical records note that Lu Buwei displayed the work at the city gate of Shanyang, proclaiming that anyone who could correct even a single character would be rewarded with 1,000 pieces of gold. This bold act served three purposes: to advertise the book, to demonstrate his political authority, and, most importantly, to influence the young King Zheng's thinking. Yet the final goal failed, for Qin Shi Huang's later policies would run counter to the philosophy of the Liu Shi Chun Chu. During the 8 years when Lu Buwei held power on behalf of the young king, Qin remained strong, continuing its campaigns of expansion despite internal unrest, natural disasters, and famine. One cannot deny that he was a capable and seasoned politician, even though he was far from flawless. However, Lu Buwei became entangled in a scandalous affair with Queen Dowager Zhao. Fearing exposure, he introduced Lao Ai, a man posing as a eunuch, into the palace to attend her. Greatly favored, Lao Ai fathered children with the Queen Dowager, and eventually built up his own faction, at times overshadowing Lu Buwei himself. In 239 BCE, King Zheng reached maturity. Lao Ai launched a rebellion. It was quickly crushed. Lao Ai and his clan were exterminated, his followers enslaved, and Queen Dowager Zhao was placed under house arrest in Yong. As Lu Buwei had been complicit, he was dismissed from office and exiled to Henan. Even in disgrace, Lu Buwei still commanded loyalty from many retainers, which troubled King Zheng. Finally, the king sent a letter implying that Liu should end his own life. Understanding the message, Liu committed suicide by poison. Afterwards, King Zheng ordered the expulsion of Liu's former retainers, though the decree was revoked thanks to the counsel of Li Shi, one of Liu's most prominent followers. With Lu Buwei's faction completely eliminated, King Zheng consolidated supreme power and began implementing his grand strategy of conquest, aiming to destroy the remaining feudal states and unify the Central Plains under Qin rule.
The conquest of the 6 states, unification of the Central Plains. In 238 BCE, after officially taking power, King Zheng of Qin continued to advance his plan of destroying the remaining feudal states to complete the great cause of unifying the Central Plains. After years of ceaseless wars, the other states had grown weak, with none strong enough to rival Qin. However, they often formed alliances to resist Qin's eastward expansion. In response to this vertical alliance, Jing revived the distant alliance close attack strategy from the time of King Zhaoshang of Qin, befriending distant states while concentrating his forces against those nearby. At that time, Qin allied with Qi and Yan, maintained peace with Wei and Chu, while directing its might against Han and Zhao. In 234 BCE, Qin initially planned to attack Han, but seeing Zhao ready to intervene, it shifted focus. General Huan Yi was appointed to lead the army, capturing Pingyang and killing Zhao General Ku Jie, annihilating tens of thousands of troops. Qin then seized Yi'an, Pingyang, and Wushang. Alarmed, King An of Han sent the scholar Han Fi to negotiate surrender. Jing admired Han Fi's political philosophy, but Chancellor Li Si slandered him, warning that Han Fi remained loyal to Han and could not truly serve Qin. Convinced, Jing imprisoned Han Fi and forced him to commit suicide. In 230 BCE, General Neishi Teng marched into Yangdi, captured King An of Han, and annexed Han into Qin as Yingchuan Commandery. The next target was Zhao. After years of warfare, Zhao's strength had waned, worsened by natural disasters. In 229 BCE, Qin launched 3 armies under Wang Zhen, Yang Duanhe, and Qiang Hui. Zhao's famed general Li Mu held firm at Fei Fort, refusing battle. Qin bribed Zhao's chancellor Guo Kai, who convinced King Qian of Zhao to execute Li Mu. Without its pillar of defense, Zhao collapsed. After a 7-month siege, Handan fell, King Qian was captured, and Zhao was destroyed. Next came Yan. In 227 BCE, Crown Prince Dan of Yan sent Jing Ke to assassinate King Jing, but the attempt failed. Enraged, Jing ordered Wang Zhen to invade Yan. The combined Yan-Dai army was defeated at the Yi River, and Kuyi fell. King Shi of Yan and Crown Prince Dan fled. Eventually, Yan executed the crown prince and sent his head to Qin in a futile attempt at peace. In 225 BCE, Qin under General Wang Ben attacked Wei. Wei entrenched itself at Daling, but Qin diverted the Yellow River and the Bian River, flooding the city. Tens of thousands perished, and King Jia of Wei surrendered. Wei was annihilated. Chu, vast in territory and population, was Qin's strongest remaining rival. At first, Jin trusted General Li Xin, granting him only 200,000 men, but the campaign ended in disaster. Qin then recalled Wang Jian, giving him 600,000 troops alongside Meng Wu. Wang Jian cautiously avoided battle for months, forcing Chu's army into supply shortages. When Chu retreated, Wang Jian launched a decisive counterattack, captured Xiaochuan, and seized King Fuchu. General Sheng Yan committed suicide. In 223 BCE, Chu was destroyed. In 222 BCE, Qin turned back to finish Yan and Dai, capturing King Shi of Yan and Zhao Jia. Finally, in 221 BCE, Qin attacked Qi, the last remaining state. Qi King Jian, complacent and unprepared, quickly surrendered. Thus, the entire Central Plains was unified under King Zheng of Qin. From Xiangyang's reforms in 361 BCE to the conquest of the last 6 states in 221 BCE, 7 generations of Qin rulers had labored toward this goal. At last, King Jing accomplished the great unification, becoming the first emperor of China, Qin Shi Huang. In 221 BCE, after conquering the state of Qi, Qin completed the annihilation of all rival states, achieving the first unification of the Central Plains. Before this unprecedented feat, King Jing of Qin deemed the title king no longer sufficient. Believing his authority surpassed that of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors, he combined their titles and proclaimed himself Huangdi, emperor. Thus he became known as Qin Shi Huang, first emperor of Qin, and decreed that his successors would continue the numbering from the 2nd emperor onward for 10,000 generations. After unification, Qin Shi Huang initiated a series of sweeping reforms to consolidate his empire. First, he abolished the feudal system of enfeoffment, replacing it with a centralized system of commanderies and counties. The realm was divided into 36 commanderies, each further divided into counties, townships, and villages. Officials were directly appointed by the central court based on merit and achievement rather than hereditary privilege. This administrative structure strengthened central authority and reduced the risk of regional separatism. To prevent the resurgence of old noble powers, Qin Shi Huang ordered the confiscation of all weapons in the empire, melting them into massive bells and 12 giant bronze statues. This both removed potential threats and symbolized Qin's might. Next, he standardized the empire's script, weights and measures, currency, and even the width of cart axles. Previously, the states had their own writing systems and standards, which caused difficulties for Qin officials governing conquered lands. Chancellor Li Si devised a standardized script to be used in all official documents. This cultural unification was reinforced with uniform systems of measurement, coinage, and transport. Roads and canals were also built to connect the empire's vast territories. On the military front, Qin Shi Huang dispatched General Meng Tian to guard the northern frontier and repel the Xiongnu. At the same time, he ordered the linking of existing fortifications built by former states, creating the precursor to the Great Wall of China, stretching some 5,000 kilometers from Lintao in the west to Liaodong in the east. Though not militarily impregnable, the wall symbolized Qin's power and defined its territorial limits. Another monumental project was the Linghui Canal, completed in 219 BCE. Spanning 34 kilometers, it connected the Xiang River to the Li and Pearl River systems, linking northern and southern waterways. The canal held immense military value for transporting troops and supplies, and later became crucial for economic integration. Qin Shi Huang also commissioned grand palaces. After conquering each state, he often ordered palaces modeled after those of the defeated kingdom built around the Qin capital of Xianyang. In 212 BCE, he began construction of the Apang Palace and his vast mausoleum at Mount Li, employing over 700,000 laborers. The sheer scale of these projects drained the treasury and the people's strength, fueling popular resentment. Meanwhile, Qin pursued southern expansion. At first, the Qin army struggled with harsh terrain and climate, but with the aid of the Linghui Canal, subsequent campaigns succeeded. Qin annexed lands corresponding to modern Zhejiang, Guangdong, Guangxi, Yunnan, and parts of northern Vietnam, relocating over 100,000 prisoners and exiles to cultivate the new territories. Finally, one of the most infamous episodes of his reign was the burning of books and burying of scholars. Later generations regarded this as one of Qin Shi Huang's most tyrannical acts, cementing his reputation as a ruthless despot. Yet in reality, the scope of which books were destroyed and who exactly were punished remains a subject of debate among historians.
On Qin Shi Huang's book burning and burying of scholars. First of all, it must be affirmed that the incident of burning books and burying scholars truly occurred in history. But why did Qin Shi Huang issue such an order? In fact, it was Prime Minister Li Si who proposed it in 213 BCE. At that time, the courtier Chun Yunue once again suggested enfeoffing princes and royal relatives. Li Si vehemently opposed this, arguing that it would undermine the empire. In his memorial, he emphasized, since the realm was now unified and laws were issued from a single authority, the common people should devote themselves to agriculture and handicrafts, while scholars ought to study legal codes rather than cling to antiquated texts. Yet Confucian scholars stubbornly revered the ancients, disparaged the current order, and spread doubt among the populace. If not prohibited, such actions would weaken imperial authority and foster factionalism. Thus, the political reforms of Qin Shi Huang faced fierce opposition from the Confucian literati. The Qin state followed legalism, which regarded law as the most effective tool of governance, while Confucianism advocated rule through moral virtue. This stark ideological clash meant that Confucians often resisted the policies of the court. To protect the new regime, Li Si proposed a radical measure to burn all books outside of Qin's official histories, sparing only works on medicine, agriculture, divination, and forestry. Anyone hiding books would be branded and sent to forced labor, while those gathering to discuss the classics would be executed with their families exterminated. In practice, the book burning mainly targeted the historical records of rival states, which often slandered Qin, and Confucian and other philosophical writings, so that they could not be used to challenge legalist doctrines. Moreover, such books were preserved in the royal archives for control rather than utterly destroyed. Hence, the true aim was not cultural annihilation, but to suppress political opposition and secure absolute power. As for the burying of scholars, the records of the grand historian recount that Qin Shi Huang grew enraged when alchemists such as Lu Sung and Ho Sung absconded after squandering vast sums of treasure in their futile quest for the elixir of immortality. He ordered an investigation, which resulted in 460 men being condemned and buried alive at Xianyang. However, elsewhere in the Shiji, these individuals are referred to as various scholars, not explicitly Confucians. It is highly likely they were alchemists and magicians who deceived the emperor, rather than Confucian scholars. Yet in later tradition, under Confucian influence, the event came to be remembered as the burying of Confucians. In conclusion, the story of burning books and burying scholars is far more complex than commonly believed. The burning of texts indeed left a lasting stain as an act of cultural destruction, and the mass execution of 460 men highlighted the harshness of Qin Shi Huang's rule. Still, at its core, the emperor's objective was not to eradicate knowledge, but to silence political opposition and secure absolute power.
The last days of Qin Shi Huang. In his final years, a meteor fell in Dong Commandery along the lower reaches of the Yellow River, bearing an ominous inscription: "The first emperor shall die, and the realm will be divided." Outraged, Qin Shi Huang ordered an investigation, but no one admitted to carving the words. In anger, he had all the local inhabitants executed and the stone burned and ground into dust. Afterward, the emperor embarked on an eastern tour.
He was accompanied by Chancellor Li Si, while Vice-Chancellor Feng Kuji remained in the capital to oversee state affairs. His youngest son, Hu Hai, also joined the journey. At Kuaiji, Qin Shi Huang offered sacrifices to the ancient ruler Yu the Great, then began his return to the capital. On the way back, near Pingyuan, he fell gravely ill. Out of fear and taboo, his ministers dared not speak of preparations for his death. As his condition worsened, the emperor wrote a sealed letter to Crown Prince Fu Su, instructing him to preside over the funeral and bury him in Xianyang. The letter was entrusted to the Central Secretariat under Zhao Gao. However, before it could be delivered, Qin Shi Huang died at Shaqiu on September 10, 210 BCE. Chancellor Li Si feared that news of the emperor's death might spark rebellion. Thus, he kept it secret, placing the coffin in a carriage disguised as an imperial tour cart. Government affairs continued as usual. Only Hu Hai, Zhao Gao, and a handful of close eunuchs knew the truth. To mask the stench of the decaying body, Li Si ordered carts filled with rotting fish to precede and follow the emperor's carriage. After nearly 2 months, the entourage returned to Xianyang, and only then was the death of Qin Shi Huang officially announced. By custom, the throne should have passed to the eldest son, Crown Prince Fu Su. Yet Li Si and Zhao Gao, fearing him, conspired to destroy the genuine edict and forged a new one, naming Hu Hai as heir. They also fabricated charges against Fu Su and General Meng Tian, sending a secret imperial command ordering their suicides. The scheme succeeded. Both men took their own lives, and Hu Hai ascended as the second emperor of Qin. Within only a few years, the Qin dynasty collapsed, plunging the realm back into chaos until it was reunified by Liu Bang, founder of the Han dynasty. Qin Shi Huang's dream of an eternal empire vanished.
Evaluation of Qin Shi Huang. Throughout history, assessments of Qin Shi Huang have leaned largely negative, branding him a tyrant. His rule was harsh, marked by extreme legalist policies, massive construction projects, and continuous wars of expansion, all of which fueled resentment among the people. Tasks that should have spanned generations, he sought to complete within a single decade. Yet, many of his reforms were undeniably visionary. The unification of script, weights, and measures, the construction of the Great Wall, the digging of the Lingkou Canal, and the centralization of power, all of which strengthened China. His greatest failing lay in the rigid application of legalist doctrine, enforced with inhuman severity, and the overly rapid concentration of authority in his own hands. He burdened himself with endless state affairs, reportedly reviewing mountains of petitions daily while refusing to delegate power. Still, one must understand his position. He was the first ruler of a truly unified Chinese empire after centuries of fragmentation. With no precedent to follow, he pressed forward along the path he believed correct. Even his obsession with seeking the elixir of immortality reflected his desire for more time to see his reforms bear fruit. The tragedy of Qin lay not in the emperor's lack of vision, but in the excessive harshness imposed upon the people, through unrelenting laws, forced labor, and colossal projects that bred rebellion. His policies might have succeeded had they been spread across generations and tempered with leniency. Instead, in rushing to complete them within a single lifetime,
Qin Shi Huang sowed the seeds of his empire's downfall. In the end, Ying Zheng, known as Qin Shi Huang, was still a man, brilliant in some aspects, flawed in others, and deeply controversial. Whether regarded as a tyrant or not, his reforms laid the foundation for later glorious dynasties of China, while the fall of the Qin dynasty itself became a cautionary lesson for rulers thereafter.
That's all for today's content. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to hit like, share, and subscribe to support the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any upcoming videos. For now, goodbye, and see you in the next one.